Hello, and welcome to episode 174 of Dissonant Waves. My name is Dominic, Ritz and Trix are here,
Hello.
Hi.
and this time we are reviving a concept we haven't done in over 100 episodes now. We're going back to albums that our parents liked, or that our parents picked, or something of that nature. You get the point.
Indeed.
Trix, you picked two. Your mom picked two, I guess, out of four.
Yes, she did. Yes. I asked my mom for album recommendations for the podcast. I specifically mentioned that we were doing like parents picks, and two of them she picked were the Cocteau Twins' Treasure and Tom Waits' The Black Rider.
And then Ritz, you also had your mom pick one.
Well, I did it in the same way with my dad. I didn't really ask them and get a response. I just picked an artist that I knew they liked and had a bit of an agreement on. I guess that was the case with Tism when I picked it last time with my dad. So I figured this time I'd pick DMAs because that's something that me and my mom agreed on.
All right. And then
All right.
I picked my dad's pick. I knew what it was going to be. He didn't even have to tell me. It is Led Zeppelin IV, the Untitled album, the big one, the one everyone knows. The album that he read a song for English class, so he's a big nerd about it.
Our fathers would probably get along, Dominic.
Maybe. I feel like every male that was alive back then was into Led Zeppelin.
Yeah, but I mean, more of like the specific things, like the poetry in English class, with my father being an English teacher and whatnot, and also being a huge Zeppelin head.
Maybe. I don't know.
I think we should probably stop this since we're on this anyway with what is undoubtedly the most popular album out of all that we're picking is the Led Zeppelin one.
Yes.
So if anybody's here that's clicked on us and gone, oh, these are the albums I'm interested in, it's probably this one. So get the clickbait out of the way and I guess start with Led Zeppelin IV.
Released November 8th, 1971, it's Led Zeppelin IV, and it's Stairway to Heaven on it. It's 8 tracks. It's legendary.
You've heard this album. If you think you haven't heard it, you've heard this album.
Yeah.
You've at least heard it, not maybe together, but on the radio. In different parts. You've heard all 8 songs. Black Dog, Rock and Roll, Battle of Evermore, Stairway to Heaven, Misty Mountain Hop, 4-6, Going to California, and When the Levee Breaks. Most of them
Indeed.
written by Jimmy Page and Robert Plant. When the Levee Breaks is technically a cover, but Led Zeppelin likes to do covers and maybe not credit people and all that stuff.
Indeed, there's people who are more qualified to speak on that. I'd say.
Right.
Well, going on to people more qualified to speak, I guess. I mean, when it comes to us talking about Led Zeppelin, I guess the big issue is kind of what can we say that hasn't already been said. This is, I mean, it's no Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon, which is at least an excuse of listening to a good album in full. This is, I mean, Stairway to Heaven it has had itself a lot of history, just with rock music, whether good or bad, or just meme. I mean, one of the more famous memes, I guess, before memes were a thing, was No Stairway.
Indeed.
No Stairway.
Wayne's World.
No Nirvana songs. No Freebird.
I'll be honest. I'm tired of listening to Stairway to Heaven.
I mean,
I feel like that's the actual hatred though of that song for anyone who hates it. Isn't because the song's bad.
I'm overplayed as hell.
Yeah, that's exactly the thing. Like I think it's the best song off this album, but that's as basic as it can get. I'm not even that fond on this album. I think it's that case of the classic rock pretentiousness of the 70s, and it can kind of just stay in the 70s. But Stairway to Heaven is one of those ones where it at least doubles down on it so much that it's actually an interesting song.
So we talk about everything has been said about it, but has everything really been said about Led Zeppelin IV? I think a lot has been talked about it being a classic. A lot has been talked about all the songs being great, yada 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 yada. But is this more of a like, everyone just says a Beyonce album is good, without really diving deep into what it actually is and the different songs and all that?
Excuse me.
This is actually just genuinely really good and well written.
like,
all of the musicians in Led Zeppelin are fucking fantastic musicians.
But I think it behooves people to like talk about the differences and like what it is about it that is interesting and like beyond just it's good, right? I think there is a lot of impressiveness to be had with the variety that's on display here. You know, you have a fair amount of like rock and roll, rockabilly. There's literally a song called Rock and Roll, right? Then you have a Battle of Evermore, which is more like mandolin focused, more fantasy. Like they literally are talking about the Lord of the Rings here.
Yeah,
it is a huge tonal switch. Stairway to Heaven is another tonal switch. It actually hews closer to Battle of Evermore because it is softer and it has flutes and things like that give that fantasy vibe, but then it transitions back into like a harder rock song, which is actually really interesting for it being in the middle of the album because then it transitions back into being more heavily rock.
Yeah.
And then, you know, When the Levee Breaks at the end is like this huge, just pounding blues song. It is like the most decked out a blues song can get. And, you know, I have my problems with bands like Kiss that just stay in their lane and make their same songs and do their shit over and over and over. I think the impressive thing is that Led Zeppelin is a great example of a band that doesn't do that. Are there different albums that have different vibes? Absolutely. But every album is roughly different. Like Led Zeppelin III is like the lightest one. Led Zeppelin I has some really interesting songs in it, a lot more covers. This is a different thing altogether, I feel like. And I think that is the part that is actually really interesting about it, coming back to it, you know, fucking 50, 60 years later at this point. 50 years.
Just 50.
Yeah.
My father's not 60 years old.
Right, it is the range of things that are happening. It is the way it is sequenced. It is beyond just saying, it's good, right? It's Black Dog, for example, being this weird fucking melody, weird fucking just guitar thing that they're doing that, you know, the story goes that it's something that you couldn't dance to, intentionally so.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like,
see,
it's a weird time signature, too.
I just gotta go interrupt, I guess, whilst you two are both going, it's good.
well,
I think I know, but that's like that's the thing that I'm gonna put out is that I'm not gonna be one of those ones because I think this album, like having properly listened to it for the first time in my life and really, you know, obviously I know the hits off this one. Everybody knows the hits of it, but actually properly listening to it back to front for the first time in my life, I thought this album was just okay at best at a full album. It's got one really good song on it that's been overplayed, and then just a bunch of just it's maybe it's Seinfeld affected. So you know, everyone can just go to me and say, "Oh, you weren't there, you don't get it," blah blah blah. I don't care. I'm not that high on this album. I think it's probably my least favorite of all the ones we've covered this week.
That's fascinating. I really like that.
That is fascinating.
I like that that's where you landed.
Yeah.
It's so easy to give it a pass. It's so easy to talk about, oh my god, these are all awesome songs, yada, yada, yada. And I do think there are things to talk about why they can be good, but having that also be a point of view here, I think opens us up to like, well, maybe I don't like Four Sticks that much. Do I even remember like super much what 4/6 is all about? Nah, you know. But Going to California, at least being an acoustic song, is interesting.
No, Going to California is one of my favorite Led Zeppelin songs of all time.
Oh, it's good to know Trix's mic is still getting slow.
Not even gonna lie.
Okay, there we go. You're back, Trix.
We got there again. Everything came out clearly. It was just very slow. I do admire the I guess the audacity to just suddenly go slow on this album. The contrast is actually probably the best.
Going to California is weird. Okay, so I don't need to repeat.
Yeah, it all came through. But there's a lot of just repetitiveness in this album as well that I just kind of really don't care for. Like Black Dog's riff is great for the first minute.
Yeah. It does,
but after a while, it's like we can kind of move on, and then the outros to some of these songs are just overdrawn and everything like that, and just point like in a live setting, it's great, but this is not a live setting. This is a fucking studio album. Rock and Roll, its best moment is the fact that it basically got interpolated on Vampire Weekend's Diane Young. The actual song itself is just, it's one of those, it just keeps going. Like, the song could have ended.
Yeah.
There was nothing that was actually brought to the rest of the song by it continuing going. And that's why I will put out with at least Stairway to Heaven. When that song continues, it does all these different parts to it, in which at least there is a reason for the song to keep going. And yes, it's the most basic thing ever to go, Stairway is my favorite off this, yeah, Stairway. But it is, because I think it's actually the most interesting song off here by far, and it's not even close.
I would still say When the Levee Breaks has a lot going for it.
I find it funny that I think it's actually just a good testament of how good this album is, that all of us have different favorite songs off this album.
I mean, Stairway is the best one because it has, like you said, the most parts to it, the most interesting kind of expansion of what that song is. Like, it's very famous. It has the gentle beginning, and then it builds, and then it has the hard rocking ending, and then it's like, wow, what a journey. And in a lot of ways, it's like, well, that's what a lot of rock songs should be, huh? But this album also proves that no, you don't necessarily have to. You can shorten songs for sure, but I don't think When the Levee Breaks would, for example, be helped by it being a Journey song. Not a Journey song,
no,
but a longer kind of like meandering
no.
song.
This album would not be improved at all by any Journey song.
Yes.
This album would be worsened by any Journey song.
Although I will say one other kind of like vibe I got, and I guess to the sense I should have expected Trix to really love this album as much as she seems to be, is that this really kind of led the groundwork for what Rush would become.
Yeah. John Paul Jones is a fantastic fucking bass player, and he deserves a lot more respect than he gets, and he gets a lot of respect. At some point, we're going to have to do a Led Zeppelin live show where it's got the 30-minute version of Dazed and Confused.
I mean, yes, obviously. We'll get there eventually. My father has subjected me to many of those, and they're good. But man, that's a lot of times listening to Dazed and Confused.
You feel dazed and confused.
and Robert Plant is a very good singer. I think, like, Geddy Lee is the one that gets the attention for being the falsetto, high-voiced guy, but Robert Plant can go toe-to-toe with him.
Yeah.
It's just that Robert Plant also was using a lot more of his range.
Yes. Robert Plant is just the better singer overall between Geddy Lee and Robert Plant. I feel like Robert Plant could easily, like, jump ship into a folk singer at his highest if he wanted to for some reason. I know that's just an insane sentence, but I think you get what I mean.
I mean, but that's what he did, though.
Yeah, you're right.
That's literally his career trajectory. It was like, well, this is all fun, but here's bluegrass now.
Yeah, I forgot. My bad. It's been a long day.
No, but it's funny that you say that because you're right.
Yeah.
You're so right that you were right. I mean, I would love to cover those albums eventually, too, just to kind of get the contrast of, like, wow, here is kind of where things ended up versus, oh, wow,
yeah,
the 60s and 70s, what a wonderful time for rock and roll, and Rolling Stones and the Beatles and Led Zeppelin, oh my god. I think there's a lot of temptation to hero worship and a lot of temptation to, like, focus on, oh my god, things are so good, and that's why we haven't done a lot of these big albums.
We got to do a Wings and Robert Plant special.
Yeah, like when he was doing stuff with Wings, or
no, like just have them together as like the what they were doing after their highest.
Well, we got to do Wings first.
We do, or the Beatles in this case.
Yeah, I don't want to do Wings just because Trix will keep making that joke every time. It'll be like 30 minutes of that joke will be the podcast.
Stay tuned to episode 300 when we finally cover Wings. Anyway,
Wings off.
Like, usually when we cover albums that are older like this, we do it for specific reasons. Like Captain Beefheart's Trout Mask Replica. What an album, right? Black Sabbath helping figure out what heavy metal is, Beach Boys and their fucking weirdness with the Smile album. Those things make sense. It's like we did Pink Floyd because you want to do Pink Floyd, Trix. I wanted to do Led Zeppelin because I know my father would want to do Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
It's the temptation is to just be so focused on the good things and all that. It's nice to have other albums that are from those times that we can kind of compare to, right? Like
Yeah.
there's a cleanness to this album. There's a clear cutness that definitely makes it stand out. But it's like trying to imagine, right? Like this up against King Crimson, up against Trout Mask Replica, right? Like what a time that is.
Yeah.
Like yeah, the society and culture was weird, but you have all these weird albums coming out, like Black Sabbath in the middle of all that.
Yeah, there. The late '60s, early '70s was a wild time for music.
Honestly, if we hadn't already covered Black Sabbath before, I probably would have picked that as my mom's pick, just because she had Paranoid as a ringtone for like a solid year.
You could have chose Paranoid because we didn't do the second album.
I know. I just wanted to pick an artist that we haven't like properly covered an album from though.
That's fair.
So I mean, in a sense, there is nothing like. I do think them going hard into like nerding out about fantasy is really cool and interesting, given things really haven't changed in a sense. Like fucking look at Ants from Up There, right?
Yeah.
Warhammer 40k.
I've got nothing else to say about this one. I'm happy to.
Lord of the Rings, baby.
Yeah, Lord of the Rings fucking rocks.
I mean, it's fine. It's a classic, you know.
I have an unhealthy love for the Lord of the Rings, I'll admit.
You'll probably love an album I plan to pick later in the year.
Hell yeah.
I mean, yes, this is the famous one, but I do think there's definitely favorites and least favorites to be had. There are some songs that are just fine, that are dragged down by there being repetitiveness. So
yeah,
it's nice to think that, you know, it's not that time has killed it or anything. It's just that time has shown that it is an album. It has its faults. It can be very good, but it's not like the 10 out of 10 best thing ever.
Indeed.
I think that's a nice point to have. Favorites, least favorites?
Favorite is Stairway to Heaven. As basic as that makes me, I'll keep having to say as basic as that makes me because I feel bad for that being my favorite, but it is. And least favorite's Rock and Roll.
Favorites for me, I'm gonna say Going to California. That is my absolute favorite Zeppelin song. And I'm gonna be contrarian and say my least favorite is Stairway, just because how many times I've heard it.
As a kid, you know, I was always very contrarian because I didn't just want to say, "Oh, I like Stairway," blah 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 blah. So I always like Battle of Evermore. I think that's a really cool song. I like how they use mandolin. It has a different feel. So that's kind of why I love that.
That's a close second for me.
What?
That's a close second for me.
That's fair. That's why I like Zeppelin as a kid, is because they had those other songs. But Stairway to Heaven obviously is a big one. It's really good, and I really do like When the Levee Breaks. Those drums are iconic. The feel is iconic. The way they interpret blues is really cool. Least favorite, Four Sticks.
Alright, what are we moving on to?
At least they didn't name it after the other part of the drum, the skin.
Okay.
That joke just came to me. I'm sorry.
That's good. That's good. You're allowed to repeat that 5 more times throughout the episode, Trix.
Okay.
Let's talk about Cocteau Twins.
Yeah.
Keeping your balls in tow, you know.
Yeah, this was one of my mom's picks. I asked her, and the reason she gave me for picking it is let me pull it up.
This one came out November 12th, 1984.
It was like that she had yes, and I got it right here. She said the Cocteau Twins album is just gorgeous, and I've never heard music like that by the time it reached me. So that is why she picked it. And I'm just passing it along, and I think this is a beautiful album too.
It's a cool album. I remember back in like 2012 when Perks of Being a Wallflower was the big movie, right? There's a Cocteau Twins song on there, and I really wanted to get into the soundtrack, so I really wanted to get into Cocteau Twins. It never really hit me properly, but the one song I did like was Beatrix. So it's nice that that's here.
Yeah.
And I've always loved Massive Attack's Teardrop, otherwise known as the theme song from House.
Oh, I mean, that's an iconic song. That song's fucking fantastic.
Yeah, and that's obviously Elizabeth Fraser on the vocals there. I wasn't ever going to come into this and think, oh, man, I wonder if there's going to be good singing, because I already knew there was going to be. She's just absolutely beautiful vocalist.
Yeah.
This is one of those ones where I think if you talk about which album probably has the least amount of standouts, just for me personally, just as an actual standout song from the rest of it all, this probably has the least, because it's probably the most consistent.
Yes.
That we've had.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's consistently great. It's a very dreamy, poppy. I mean, it's dream pop, I guess, in a sense. But it's more in that dreamy sense of an album. It's something that I guess the worst mistake I kind of done was kind of putting it on in the background in a sense, because you kind of just get a bit lost, that you kind of just don't really focus, because it's quite easy to just kind of, I guess, not really like lose yourself in the album, but just kind of have it on very casually, because it's just very. That's a problem I kind of get a lot with dream pop, or that sense, is that it's very easy to do that with. It's just very pleasant to have on in the background that you forget that you're supposed to be focusing on it.
I think I have a way to describe this perfectly. It's an album to do substances and art to.
Sure, yeah. It's an album that's not going to like get you distracted when you're doing stuff.
No.
Unless you're just kind of casually tuning in for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Worth talking about some other stuff we listened to around this era. Talking Heads, Speaking in Tongues, New Orders, Power, Corruption, and Lies, sorry. And then the other 1984 album we listened to so far is Danny Elfman's Solo.
All of my picks, might I add.
Then after that, Dead Man's Party and Meat is Murder from 85.
I repeat.
That's not your pick. I think it's Meat is Murder.
Yeah. I think my pick for that week was Eating a Steak.
So is all the 1984 albums from Trix?
Yes, Danny Elfman's Solo in this.
Yeah, okay. Can we make the episode art? You know that meme of the person pulling down the calendar is 1984?
Yeah.
Just put Trix's face on that.
Trix, you're up to make that.
Okay.
It's time for you to pick an album, Trix.
1984.
But yeah, I mean, I want to tell you like the big standout moments on this. It's I guess it's hard to do that because there's not really much else to compare it to but itself. When what we have on this, and then yeah, it's lovely. I think this is one of those ones you just kind of talk more about the legacy or the reception, if there really is any legacy to this album. I don't think it's really the Cocteau Twins album that people talk about as much.
I don't think so either.
I mean, if you want to talk about, I think this is a band that benefits greatly from being after Joy Division and New Order.
Yeah.
Do what those bands do, but they are undeniably influenced by like that sound and that trend.
It's goth, but in a different light.
I believe it's Heaven or Las Vegas is the one that most people talk about. I think that's the one that's usually considered the I guess the peak. Yeah, the peak Cocteau Twins. But I mean, you can even just kind of look at just the scene, I guess, of EDM or the EDM influenced pop artists that would come out in the mid-10s. So I guess the indie EDM I'm talking about, not like the the big danceable ones of like the dubstep sort of influenced ones that would come out, but the stuff like the Daughter or the let me think of another one in just a second. Sylvia Nessa, that's another one I was trying to remember the name.
Even stuff that we listen to more more recently, like Tennis, right? Like dream pop, like that.
Yeah,
like that all comes from.
Or even the XX is probably a good
oh fuck, we still
good example as well.
Holy shit,
we do.
I mean, the XX isn't exactly Cocteau Twins. You know, it is a different sound, but you can see the influence artists like this put onto the. I guess not as recent now because it's more that 10s era that we had it in, but that indie EDM pop that we had for a bit there, and it's it kind of all attributes back to the sound that we're creating here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as far as like legacy goes, like it is considered a high watermark in like dream pop and like ethereal moments like that. In as far as beauty goes, like Robert Smith loves it. A lot of places are like called it, a really important album of the 80s, whether it's like best of the 80s, best in like post-punk, 12 essential 1980s alternative rock albums according to Pop Matters, that kind of shit. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
And then I guess the other thing to mention too is that like Lorelei of all things was like a minor dance hit, apparently, according to Wikipedia. So that was the song
Makes
that kind of
sense.
broke out.
I mean, they had a couple songs that broke out, pretty sure.
Yeah.
It wasn't like Cocteau Twins were completely in obscurity.
Oh no.
But in US, I guess maybe a little. But let's take a look at the singles here. They had 3 songs hit the US alt charts, which is interesting. They had Caroline's Fingers, Ice Blink Lock, and Heaven All Lost Fingers, but none of it from our Treasure.
No.
In fact, if I'm just taking a look at this, I think none of it even hit the UK in charts, which you would have expected that if they were going to hit the charts from anything from this album would be in UK, but they didn't.
I mean,
at least according to Wikipedia.
29 in the UK, like charts overall.
Yeah, but that wasn't for anything off this album.
No, it was just for the album itself.
Mm-hmm.
No, also, yeah, and there was a song from the EP that they released that came 29 as well.
Like it charted in Sweden, it charted in New Zealand, and the UK, and that's really it. Yeah, like I'm reminded of other, UK adjacent bands and things that are like beautifully sung. I think this it's a great region if you want to hear really great singers do really cool things.
Yeah.
And it's nice to kind of reflect on like, well, the 70s were a really interesting test bed for a lot of these genres. 80s were a really interesting test bed for these other genres, right? Like dream pop coming 10 years after something like Led Zeppelin IV is kind of crazy to think about.
Yeah. Ooh, sorry, I just sneezed and threw my entire shit out of whack.
It's fair play. I feel like I struggle to talk about the like the credentials to talk the rest about this album, but like it's a good album. And it was really listen.
Yeah.
Favorites, least favorites, if we're all good.
Cheese sandwich is the term for this one.
Yeah, I'd agree.
It's very cheese sandwich, but I do like Beatrix. That's the song that I knew. That's the song that I've always liked. Just kind of.
I'm glad you like me, Dominic.
Yeah, well, I have this idea in mind that one day you and B from Home Is Where will make a band, and you'll just be named after this song specifically.
Are we really padding out this episode now with Dominic's dreams?
It is dream pop after all.
Anyway, since you're going to be so vile about it, let's talk about DMAs now.
Cool. So I'll start this off before the expected response comes. 2018, DMAs for now. Their second album gets released. I was excited for this one. So was kind of the rest of my family. But I introduced my mom to DMAs 2 years prior when the Believe Like a version came out, and then she fell in love with DMAs, and it became one of the few artists that we agree on. We're both excited, and we both really liked this album back in 2018. And I'm going to be honest, I hadn't really listened to the album in full since, I think since 2019. I kind of have ignored it for a while. It was my second favorite back in 2018, but 2018 is a year where my rankings were really fucked up, so I don't really take too much into that anymore. And yeah, I was ready to go into one of those, do I still like it as much as I did, or is it best left back in the times going into this week? That's my intro.
Fair enough.
Well, it is.
So hold on. I will forget to say, yes, this is basically just Australians doing Oasis. I will admit that.
Well, I just wanted to point out that this is a little bit of the oddball out, considering this one was released April 27th, 2018, so it's a lot more modern, a lot more...
Which, the other fun thing about that was that was my birthday.
Oh, happy birthday! Glad you got something.
Yeah,
Like
so
Happy birthday.
I got this. I got the CD on my birthday.
Hell yeah.
Trix, were you gonna say something?
I forget what I was going to say if I was going to say anything.
Oh, okay. Yeah, this is Oasis. This is very '90s alternative, which I think is interesting.
Yeah.
How much later it is that they're still doing it, and they're not a band from back then. They're just a more recent band, still able to pull off that sound effectively.
Well, I mean, Australia is still in the '90s, so it tracks.
Yeah, this is a part of the Britpop revival scene, which I don't know when it started, but it started basically. It says apparently at the beginning of the 2010s, according to Wikipedia. I would have thought it started basically as Britpop was still going. The other interesting thing, the other interesting thing to mention as well is that this album is produced not just by the band, by Kim Moyers as well from the Presets. And that was one of the few EDM style bands that we had in the noughties that I believe broke out pretty well overseas as well. But I don't know how well enough you two know of them.
I don't offhand.
I don't either.
You two are not with your people.
What I will say about this is I think this is another really nice cheese sandwich. This was actually really pleasant to listen to. I actually quite like this.
Yeah. This feels like a good driving album.
Yes.
Like while I was listening to this, I was just picturing the New York cornfield stretching by me, and like just 5 over, air conditioner blasting, this going on the radio.
Trix, I can probably guess exactly what song you had that on because that's the song that I get that vibe from.
Which one?
It would have been Tape Deck Sick.
Not just Tape Deck Sick. I was also feeling it on like In the Air.
Yeah, In the Air.
Break
Dawning.
Me. Lazy Love.
I think it's a whole album really made for that, not just one particular song.
Yeah.
So
like, this is a cruising album.
My big fear coming into this album when I listened to it again was that it was going to be a lot worse than I remembered. And for the first time in a long time, when I go into these kind of fears, I can say, holy shit, I was wrong. It is actually still, yes, I agree. This is a really good album, despite wearing its influences still pretty clearly on its sleeve. I think this is the moment in time where they were at least starting to go into the direction that was more uniquely their own sound. I definitely am not as hot on this album as I was back in 2018.
Which is fair.
Yeah.
Because I think there are some more flaws now that I can kind of notice with this album, but I still think it is, in the end, still a great album. But I actually have this would have been during the 2018 period where I did score some couple albums, so I haven't checked what my review was in a while here. Let's go check it out. And found it. I gave it a 9. I said my favorite tracks were For Now, Dawning, In the Air, Do I Need You Now, and Tape Deck Sick, and my least favorite was Health. I disagree with my least favorite now. I think my least favorite's Lazy Love. I think that's the one song in this album I can say it does nothing by being there.
I'd say my least favorite's probably somewhere in that later half as well.
Mm-hmm. And I think Health is actually a really good closer that's not the closer.
You can kind of tune out Emily White if you want, but I do think it's nice that it's there.
It's a good song, it's just that the album's already closed.
This is definitely one of those albums
realistic
that I had play through, and it was in the background while I was doing stuff, so it just started playing again, and I just let it play again.
And the other thing that I kind of appreciated more back then, which I've kind of realized there's a bit of a fault, is I was kind of pretty happy with the flow of this album the first time going around. And I don't think the flow's bad in the sake of the actual like songs and how they sound, but I think this does still feel like not still, but looking at it now, feel more like a collection of songs more than it does an album. It's a collection of songs that isn't still in the same vibe. Don't get me wrong, and this is, it's not like it feels like a compilation, but I feel like the flow doesn't exist as much as I thought it does.
I mean, I guess I would argue that I don't know if there needs to be a flow when everything is such a vibe, right? Like,
That is true, but these are still things that I said I appreciated back then.
Sure.
Which is now changed to be now.
I mean, would it sound different to me if there was a different, flow of it, a different track list? Maybe. But I think what is here works for what the album is currently.
Oh yeah, there was some incredible moments in the songs here still, which I think are moments where you can look back on DMA's whole discography, which for you two, it's only going to be this album and the Believe cover. That's the only things that were covered of them on this podcast, and the Believe one was kind of in passing for the whole Like a Version episode.
Yeah.
But there are some actual really great moments in the songs here. I mean, In the Air, that outro is fucking gorgeous.
I would agree.
Yes.
As much as the lyrics on it are very simplistic and it's not saying too much, the emotion that's brought in vocally from Do I Need You Now is what makes it one of the highlights. Well, them going that bit more clubby in songs like The End as well put out some kind of interesting differences in this album as well. I've always thought Tape Deck Sick was my favorite song off this, even before everybody else decided that, so I'm being hipster and that shit. But that's always the one where I've had like that whole vibe of the whole driving around on a road trip kind of thing from it. I think they've kind of captured this feeling really well in the song, even if it's not too intentional with how it's going. I do like the production does on here, which is more kind of it's a bit rougher sounding at times, or like it sounds a bit darker, I guess, is what they're trying to go with this whole, compared to usually what Britpop sounds like. I can't say they're always hitting that vibe as well. Some of it does sound a bit more than what everything else is going on through here, but getting an opener like For Now is. Yeah, I like I said, it's not too groundbreaking, but it's at least interesting instead of having just a clean Wonderwall ripoff.
Oh yeah, there's no Wonderwall moment, for better or for worse.
No, but
it's all. I wouldn't say inoffensive, but it is gentle enough that it's easy to put on in the background, like a dream pop album. But it's also like if you like '90s stuff a lot, you'd probably like this. It's a band that's hard not to recommend at the very least.
Yeah.
You hate guitars, maybe not listen to it, but at that point, what are you listening to?
Yeah, fair enough.
Classical, maybe. But even then, you'll find guitars in classical.
Yes.
Well, I mean, going with it, that's hard not to recommend that comment. I would say this is probably their best album, and going on for their later discography right now, there is a massive difference in quality between this album and their last album.
Oh.
And the one in between, The Glow, I think it's still actually quite an interesting album that they put out there, because that one seemed to have a lot more influence from the singles in the kind of UK clubbing scene going into this album, and then it just didn't really stick with that theme and kind of went a bit more generic DMA sound on it. And that's still, to me, like one of the most disappointing full albums. It's like there could have been something like really interesting to listen to, and they got too scared to commit to it. I mean, I don't know what the actual reason is for them choosing their stylistic choices and stuff, but it's how I felt of that. Yeah. And I mean, that was a 2020 album as well, so 2020 albums always feel weird to talk about.
They do.
It's just amazing that it took 19 years to get The Glow Part 1.
Phil Elverum, you've done it again.
Different band, even different continent. Yeah, baby.
Even though The Glow Part 1 was on the album before.
Yeah.
No one needs to know that yet.
So, in short, it's a good album still, which, seeming as how I look back on a lot of my 2018 choices and go like, yeah, there were some great things I chose for my favorites of that year, but there's a lot of just stuff that I just don't listen to, or I don't think I think I've ranked too highly, and other stuff that's come out from that year that should have had more listens. I'm at least happy that it's like, okay, I can kind of defend this one being so high on there, because there is still quite a lot of great moments on this.
Yes.
I don't think I think if I re-rank 2018, this doesn't end up as my second favorite. But I think there's also a lot of stuff that's come out from 2018 that I've now noticed that it always makes it hard. You know, hindsight is 2020 and all that bullshit.
Yeah.
It's a good. I mean, if you're going to rip off a racist, you got to do it in a way that at least sounds good. And I think this is an album that sounds good. What more can you say?
Favorites, Dawning. I guess for now, I really like Warsaw. Tape Deck Sick is cool, but it's like, you know, the whole thing is a vibe. The whole thing is nice. It's a good cheese sandwich.
Yeah. Favorite, I'll say, is Tape Deck Sick. No real least favorite. Good cheese sandwich.
Favorites. I mean, all the ones that I kind of put into my rankings, I guess. I mean, For Now, I probably wouldn't put into 100 like I did, but I also put in a lot of them, so yeah. I'm probably not worried too much about how I rank these things, but Dawning, In the Air, Do I Need You Now, and Tape Deck Sick. Definitely my favorites off this. The End, I still like as a highlight. It's one of those. Yeah, this was actually a really good song and interesting take on it. Least favorite, it used to be Health, but I appreciate it a lot more now. It's just Lazy Love. I think if there's any song on here, even if it doesn't sound bad, it's just that it doesn't belong in the album or does nothing to the album. I feel like Lazy Love is the one that does that.
That's fair.
Anyone else have to say anything about this album?
It's a vibe.
It's a vibe. And now, the final album to talk about. Tom Waits, The Black Rider, released September 1993. No date clearly given. But, wow. This is an album based on a play that was done by Waits and William S. Burroughs, of all fucking people. Holy shit!
Yeah,
it's something. You to introduce it, please.
My mom just sent this one with the tagline. This is where Waits started getting weird, and yeah, it's weird, but it's fantastic.
It's
like Shrek 2.
What's on Shrek 2?
Tom Waits.
Oh yeah, he is.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
There's nothing from this album. It was Little Drop of Poison.
I just think this is cool. Like the way he commits to the bit. I think, you know, having actually read William S. Burroughs before, I get it. There's a sense of not knowing what's going on, but also kind of understanding what's going on and kind of intuiting a lot of things that is really interesting.
Yeah.
I would love to see what a stage version of this looks like.
Oh, absolutely.
Like that is I would love to see someone do this. It's based on like a folktale, German. It was done in German first. Was my understanding.
Yeah, it was based on a German opera that was based on a German folktale.
And I haven't never really listened to Tom Waits that much, except
me either.
A couple things here and there. Of course, the singing song, like that's a huge thing that's here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll interrupt for a quick moment when it comes to the song, because there were enough of those moments where you just listen to it, just the instrumentations happening and going, I've heard this on Neutral Milk Hotel. Like, not I've heard this exact same way, but like I feel like this is the same stuff. I got such a vibe. It's like, did Jeff Mangum get inspired by some of the instruments on this or something?
It's very possible.
I could see it.
It's totally possible.
Because it predates it.
It predates it. Tom Waits was somebody that is well known in the right circles.
Yeah.
But the way that the instrumentation was used for that ambience it's very much similar to the same way it's used in Neutral Milk Hotel.
Yeah.
I totally would believe that Jeff Mangum was influenced by Tom Waits. That seems like the right kind of thing that he'd be influenced by.
Yeah, I agree.
There's something that's really interesting given like Tom Waits' just voice and what he does as a musician, it's described in part as like dark cabaret, and I love that like idea, like this kind of you can see it being done as like this very theatrical like performance, and you're like even like in like a cabaret style bar or something like that, like there's a sense of like people are just singing their heart out and doing their thing, but there's enough theatricality, but you can imagine a larger story if you give it time. Like the cracks and the crevices and the raspiness all really sell it.
Yeah. Tom Waits has also got a very unique vocal style.
He sounds like he's been smoking two cartons of unfiltered Luckies a day since birth.
Yeah. I mean, there are definitely contemporaries, especially in the 90s, to Tom Waits and this kind of style. I think the least surprising thing about Shrek 2 is that the other hook there is Nick Cave. So it's Tom Waits and Nick Cave, and they're very, very similar with how their vocals go.
Yeah.
Sure. I don't know if Nick Cave would do this, but yeah.
I don't know if Nick Cave would do exactly this, but I wouldn't put it past him to go in a very similar boat. This I can't even tell you that I'm like fully into this album because it's very, very avant-garde.
I am fully into this.
Like the more I listened to it, the more I was fully invested. I'm like, this is weird, and like the singing is not like the best thing ever, but the passion is what sells it.
Yeah,
I'm sold on this album after just basically the listen I gave it, but it doesn't mean I'm fully into every part of it. There are some parts where it just gets a bit. I guess just with how simplistic it is still in its styling, it's all at you. It does get kind of intense to listen to, and that's not just even talking about anything that it's about or the lyricism. It's just the sound of it itself.
Yeah.
I mean, Pink Floyd has shown that whenever rock music becomes carnival-y, it gets pretty fun. So,
That's true.
was kind of reminded of The Wall a little bit.
I could see that.
But I think there's a really certain kind of tragedy and like, I don't know, wistfulness to some of these songs like Lucky Day and Black Rider that are really interesting. And just kind
of... I really enjoy like the kind of like Old West undertone this whole thing has.
Yeah. Like, I'll Shoot the Moon kind of has that old style like romance feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
Like like what are you gonna do for me? Well, like it's in It's a Wonderful Life. I'll give you the moon, right? I'll throw a rope around it and bring it down for you. It's that kind of stuff. And I'll Shoot the Moon kind of feels in a way like that, but in a much more dark, tragic sense.
Yeah.
Or just listening to the way his voice cracks on the Briar and the Rose, right? It's like the way he carries that thing all the way through, even though it sounds like it could fall apart at any moment.
Yes.
And you just get to, and for me, the highlight of the album is actually the really beautiful Russian dance, which sounds like a lot of Russian music you've heard, but it sounds like it in the best way possible. It's just a really beautiful composition.
It comes out of nowhere, but it works so well too in the album.
Yeah, like it finds a way to kind of pull disparate things together and make them build and build and build to get to some kind of climax, whatever it is. You don't even really know unless you've seen the play, I'm sure, but it's...
I mean, I do feel like I'm missing a lot of context by not having seen the play, or no, it's not like because I missed that context, I can't understand this album. But it's more so like I feel like that would actually be what pushes over the edge to kind of fully enjoy this.
Like you were saying before, this is kind of an unofficial trilogy that Trix has chosen. This Post-Apocalypto, and what was the other one?
Shit.
Fuck.
I just like the idea that we now have to compare the Black Rider and Post-Apocalypto. The answer is just that the Black Rider is better.
Yes. Oh, 100% better.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a comparison. And there's a comparison's done, because anything else is heresy.
Yeah.
What was the other one you think you picked? Shit. I'll go back here.
We've only got, 170 episodes to fucking go through?
No,
Yes. Well, Domino looks at that. I'd like to point out that some of like the instrumentation in this is just wild. Like, you obviously have like the beautifully like recorded, and I'm assuming it was like an actual orchestra for like Russian dance. And then you have something like Taint No Sin, where it's very obvious he's playing a shitty Casio keyboard sound, or whoever the the musician who he had hired is playing just a shitty Casio keyboard sound of like an oboe or something.
Very Jeff Mangum as well.
Yes.
I feel like him totally being a Tom Waits. I feel it more and more now.
Have you found the other album?
No, I'm gonna do a user key search.
From Trix. What have you told us to listen to this year, Trix?
A lot.
Let's see. Yeah, I can't keep scrolling down because all I'm getting is about shit, corn, and Borderlands.
That's been my evening, I'll be honest.
You know,
I watched the Borderlands movie and it was a hot load of ass.
How about for the anniversary show, all we do is watch the Borderlands movie with the Black Rider on in the background?
That might elevate it to high art.
Gotta be here solid.
Like that. I've watched the trailer for Borderlands, and by that I mean I watched half of it.
You probably gave too much eye time to it.
Yeah, I was just like, how does Jack Black sound as Claptrap? Like, man,
horrible.
You really tried to blow up Tenacious D over this?
Yeah.
If you should have just kept the controversy and just maybe they would have said, sorry, we got to delay this and get a new voice actor. Maybe that would have saved the Borderlands because they could have delayed it and made a new movie.
The other one is
this was already
older.
Yes, that's right.
Unofficial trilogy of like weird musical not musicals this year.
Yeah, maybe I'll find more.
Because this was recorded as a studio album based on a play, but it's not meant to be the play itself.
No.
You know what, Trix? I think we'll talk more about the Borderlands movie in the anniversary show, which is going to come out before this episode, so everybody's already going to hear us having talked about the Borderlands movie. We'll get a review done by one person who's watched it and by two people who have only watched the trailer.
Yeah. I also recently gave Gearbox money because I rebought Borderlands 3 with all the DLC.
I see.
I never played the DLC.
I feel like I have to. I have invested so much into this series just in terms of time. I feel like I have to. Like, I can't explain it.
Borderlands 3 was built up on the hype that Borderlands 2 and the pre-sequel brought on. Even though the pre-sequel didn't bring them that much on there was enough hype from it.
The pre-sequel genuinely has some of the best Borderlands content of all time, and I will stand on that hill.
That's fine. I'm not here to rip on the pre-sequel. I'm here to rip on Borderlands 3.
Mm-hmm.
And holy shit, the story was bad in that game. And just the whole idea of multiple vaults could have been this like absolute epic thing, and just how every vault felt like a piece of shit, only for the last one to be the same vault that we've already done before.
Yeah.
I have no opinion.
I also
watched it.
Also, as a huge fan of Borderlands 2, I was playing Borderlands 2 before we started recording this fucking episode. That's how much I fucking love that game. 3's genuinely fucked with my muscle memory, and I just could not play it for the longest time.
Oh.
Like, it's that bad to me.
How about that game?
Anyway, we'll get back to Wonderlands?
Yeah.
I don't know. My neighbor stole my guy.
Bitches.
Anyway, we'll talk more about the Borderlands and the movie and stuff in the anniversary episode, which you would have all already heard if you're long-time listeners, which probably not. Tom Waits.
I like this a lot.
This shit's good. I really like this.
Yeah. Oh yeah, even with the kind of like struggle that I have at times to like fully enjoy this, I still enjoy it a lot because it's very just unique.
Dare I say this might be my number one for the week?
I mean, we're doing rankings soon, so
opinion. I think your mom has really interesting taste in music. I am a fan.
I'll have to get more recs from her.
She picks really interesting stuff. It's not just, oh yeah, my dad likes Led Zeppelin IV, let's do that.
Yeah. Hey, sometimes you got to pick what you know.
It's true.
And we were going to talk about Zeppelin IV at some point.
Of course.
We've been going for 5 years. I mean, for fuck's sake.
We'll get to everything eventually. That always works.
Yeah.
I don't want to call this a cheese sandwich because it's not. I want to call it a blender because it's not. It's just hard to give a favorite or least favorite when it's just an album that's kind of. There is no way you can listen to a single song of it. You listen to it as an album or you don't listen to it at all.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That said, I do like The Black Rider. I do like I'll Shoot the Moon. Russian Dance is my favorite. It's just really good. My least favorite's probably the end, Carnival. It's just kind of there.
Favorites for me are November, Russian Dance, Crossroads. There's a line in Crossroads where Tom Waits just sings in his voice like, and marijuana leads to heroin. And it just gives me chills. Gospel Train's great. Oily Night. The back half of this album gets really good in my opinion.
I don't disagree.
No least favorite.
All right. I'm happy to do the first rankings this week.
Yeah.
All right.
So I'm decided I'm going to rank it on a couple of things. The number one thing is how is it as an album and its quality, I guess. And then it'll just be by the quality of the songs. So on that case, I think 2 of these albums are albums in its consistency, and then 2 of them are good are a collection of songs. The Led Zeppelin one is number 4 because it's a collection of songs to me, and a couple of them are alright, but ultimately, it's not bad. It's just an okay album for me. And then number 3, in that sense, would be DMAs because I think the songs in there are all quality, but it doesn't feel like an album like the other 2 do. So, number 2 would be Cocteau Twins. And then number 1, I think it just stands out a lot more than it. Even if I've probably listened to songs from the other 3 more, as an actual album and experience, it is the Black Rider. It stands out like none of the other albums are doing. So it kind of just has to win number 1.
Mm-hmm.
I will put number 4 as Cocteau Twins. I like it. It's cool. I just like the other ones more. I quite like the DMA's album. I actually really quite like it. But the Black Rider, number 2, is a lot more interesting. And I do think Led Zeppelin IV is a classic. It is really good. It is my number 1. But I do like having a sobering look at it and assessing it more as an album.
That's fair. These rankings for me are just kind of based on vibes. Number 4, DMAs. I liked it, but I liked everything else more. Number 3, go with Cocteau Twins. Same reason. Then I'll go Zeppelin IV because I just think the Black Rider is much more interesting of an album to listen to than Led Zeppelin IV.
There you go. Almost a win, but not quite.
Not quite.
Not quite.
Which means it is time to talk about what we're going to do for episode 175. This is the one. This is the one we've been waiting to do for a while now.
Indeed.
I'll go first. As we all know what this is. I have passed around a playlist for this like a long time ago at this point. I have picked,
yes, but that person that we were sharing with isn't joining anymore, correct?
Correct.
Cool, I'm going to change the pick, sorry.
I'm not changing mine.
You motherfucker.
I will pick that album for the week afterwards, but it was just something that needs to be picked beforehand, so...
Well, we go first then. Tell us what you got.
I mean, it's a crime if we...
Wonder what it could be.
Yeah, Trix is like, oh, what could this be? What could this be? As a joke there. I mean, come on, even if this was bad, we're going to pick it, so let's just bite the bullet and have some fun. It's the Your Arms and My Cocoon album.
All right.
Yeah. Rabbit.
All right.
Had to be picked.
You have changed your pick now to Your Arms, My Cocoon, Death of a Rabbit.
Mm-hmm.
And that literally just came out right before this recording. So what a time to pick it.
3 hours ago.
Indeed.
As I was saying, we are going back to Radiohead and Muse. We are nearing the end of this. There are only a handful of episodes left that I'm going to do for this. We'll probably cover the Smile in a different way, or just do it eventually.
I want to say as well, knowing the Muse that we are coming up for, it's going into the era of Muse that I've never listened to in full before. So it's got to be some interesting, fresh takes on it.
And we're gonna have another detour before we get to the final studio album. So there's still a few weeks of other stuff to do. But this will be finished this year. That is my guarantee.
Hell yeah.
I have picked for this one Radiohead's The King of Limbs. But that's a pretty short 8-track album, so I've also thrown in 8 singles throughout their history that we just haven't talked about yet. They run the gamut from Pop is Dead. That's like one of the early ones. I need to pull up the list here, actually. But I'll mention them in a second. The other album that we're doing is Muse's Simulation Theory, the Super Deluxe Edition. Yep. It is their 80s throwback, but the twist here is that the Super Deluxe Edition, every song has been done in a different style, a different way, whatever you want to call it. So there's almost two or three versions of every song.
So the fun of this, Dominic, is that I've actually been talking with my brother about this whole kind of experiment as well at times, because we go out to gigs together. We'll talk about music and stuff whilst waiting for the other artists, and we talked about band's discography, and I've mentioned how we've been covering this, and he's talked about waiting to see for the later parts of Muse discography, and specifically Simulation Theory and Will of the People. So now that we're finally getting to Simulation Theory, it's going to be me finally talking to my brother. This album, do I like? I've never listened to this. Yeah, do I hate this album? Do I like this? I've never listened to Simulation Theory in full. I've listened to, I think, some of the singles in passing, but I can't even remember them. So this is the period of Muse now where I'm basically going into this for the first time.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
Trix, you're just coming along for the ride. I know.
I am.
But we appreciate you.
I've been able to start interjecting my own theory as to why Radiohead and Muse has not clicked for me. And that is because of Steven.
I want to mention the 8 other songs Radiohead did. I'm adding to this. Pop is Dead, I Want None of This, Harry Patch in Memory of, These Are My Twisted Words, Super Collider, The Butcher, The Daily Mail, and Staircase. They're all songs between like the mid-90s up to 2011 that, because Super Deluxe is double the length, this is then doubling the length of King of Limbs.
Okay.
Beautiful.
And I have my own theory as to why I don't like Radiohead and Muse, as I was saying, and that is because of Porcupine Tree and Steven Wilson. So we are going to be covering 2 of Steven Wilson's albums that were recorded at the same time. That is his under Wilson To the Bone, and another under his kind of ambient project called Bass Communion, with his album Cenotaph.
Wait, you're picking To the Bone?
That was the one I said I was picking, I think.
You said Grace for Drowning.
Oh yeah, Grace for Drowning. That's right. My bad.
Who would change their album at the last minute, Trix?
It's also 3 a.m. for me.
So you're doing Steven Wilson's Grace for Drowning.
Yep, and Bass Communion Cenotaph.
Grace for Drowning Deluxe Edition?
Nope, just the regular.
Right. Well, to recap then, that makes this Radiohead's King of Limbs, and then assorted singles, which we'll talk about then. Muse's Simulation Theory, the Super Deluxe Edition. Your Arms Are My Cocoons, Death of a Rabbit. Steven Wilson's Grace for Drowning, and Bass Communion's Cenotaph. This has been Dissonant Waves. My name is Dominic. You can catch me online at DACICHOCKI on Twitter. Dominic Chakotay on YouTube if you must. I'm also on the Games My Mom Found podcast sometimes. I just want to shout out our episode for Bujingai, The Forsaken City.
I've been Ritalin. My stuff's in the description below.
I've been Trix, and I am inside of your walls. Buy our merch. Check out all our shit.
Dissonant Waves.space. Dissonant Waves on Twitter and YouTube.
Redbubble.
Buy our merch. Support our Patreon if you'd like. That'd be cool.
Yeah, you can force me to get a tattoo.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I've still got stuff I need to write for the Patreon. It'll be done.
Yep.
Alrighty. Now let's do it for us. Have a good time, everybody.